On Life and Meaning is brought to you by Blumenthal Performing Arts, celebrating its 25th year presenting the best in performing arts, sharing and employing the arts as a major catalyst to strengthen education, building community cohesiveness, and advancing economic growth. To discover the best in events and performances, visit blumenthalarts.org.
You know, it was around that time that I also met my wife, Sarah, and we fell in love and we got married, and we found out the day we came home from our honeymoon that we were pregnant. And so that section of my life started to sort of pick up into hyperdrive. And so I think all these elements sort of conspired to lead to the thrash to a certain extent. What is next for me? And I think what it turned out, I was so hyper-focused on what the next project was for me, but really, I think what was next for me was connection. It was basically about opening up, allowing people to see who I really am, and connecting more and more with my fellow humans, including my wife and our daughter.
Matt Olin creates moments of human brilliance. He is the owner of Matt Olin Creative, a copywriting, branding, and creative consultancy. He is also the host of CreativeMornings Charlotte, a breakfast lecture series for the creative community. Matt has a 20-year career as a theater producer, having developed and produced over 60 projects for the stage in New York and Charlotte. He was a member of the Dodger Theatrical's Broadway producing team, which received 14 Tony Awards during his tenure. He was managing director and producer of Charlotte Repertory Theater. For many years, he was the keyboardist for Shadowflag, a rock touring band. In this episode, Matt talks about the power and purposes of creativity, how he came to be who he is, and who he hopes to become. I'm Mark Paris, and this is On Life and Meaning. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Matt, what is Creative?
I love what you've done with the show. It really looks. I'm looking around at the show, and it's delicious. Sorry, I cut you off.
It's okay. What is Creative Mornings?
Well, Creative Mornings is one of the great joys of my life. That's for sure. It is a monthly breakfast lecture series for all Charlotteans. We like to say it's a monthly breakfast lecture series for the creative community, but we also subscribe to the belief that everyone is creative, which means in turn that it is a lecture series for everyone. And what we're doing is we're gathering once a month really to celebrate the creative spirit of Charlotte and also the innate creativity inside of all of us. And so folks are usually very surprised to see how eclectic, how diverse the room is. It's not just all artists and designers and writers and musicians and folks like that. It's also people running nonprofits and lawyers and doctors and stay-at-home moms and people in between jobs and things like that. It's such an amazing just honor to be in the room with all those folks celebrating how creative Charlotte is.
What exactly happens at Creative Mornings?
Well, it's a 90-minute free experience. Tickets are always free. You just have to grab one of those tickets when they go up online. But we gather for 90 minutes. The first 30 minutes is free coffee, free amazing breakfast by local purveyors, and lots of interaction and mingling, but not in a networky sort of a way. People don't have their business cards out and they're walking around. People are really just sort of like getting to know each other. The way I like to say is you're seeing old friends, you're making new friends. And that's kind of the vibe that we very intentionally create and I think is happening in that room. And then at 9 o'clock, from 9 to 10, we have a program. But it varies widely in tone and content and that sort of a thing. So we always have a live musician or a band play some new song that they're working on from here in the community. We thank our sponsors. We play a fun game, And all of it is hinged on the one-word theme that we are exploring that month, along with 172 other chapters around the world. So it's a global community of chapters. It becomes sort of this global conversation around the word compassion or time or any number of other words that we've explored. And then the main event is a speaker, a 20-minute talk by a local person who brings their own unique creative spin on that theme. And hopefully we've shifted your perspective a little bit. Hopefully you've laughed a few times and made a few new connections as well. So.
But what does it mean to you? What is Creative Mornings in your life? What does it represent to you?
For me, I stumbled upon Creative Mornings in my late 30s, actually probably closer to 40, that sort of touchstone moment in my life. And I think I had accomplished a lot creatively, professionally, even personally at that point, but I had hit just a point in my life where I was going through the thrash. Yeah, and we can talk about that in a little bit here, but I was really just sort of like figuring out what is next for me. I had a show that I had helped create that was closing on Broadway. My wife and I had a 6-month baby. We were living in Brooklyn, New York, and I had no idea what was next for me. And I just kept sort of, as I went deeper trying to figure that out, I kept saying to myself, I just want to gather creative people together and see what happens. And then, lo and behold, I discovered that Creative Mornings did not have a chapter launched in Charlotte yet. And it was like this eureka moment, this lightning strike moment for me. As I absolutely had to pursue this and see if I could win the chapter and launch it. For me, it is both filling myself up by connecting with people who are creative in so many different ways in their lives, whether it's the work they're doing, the business they're building, the way that they're running their families, or these other, as I say, hack their lives in unique, creative ways. I'm learning from those people just by meeting them and getting to know them and being in rooms with them. So part of it is just, for me, is filling myself up by connecting with other creative people. Part of it is also falling deeper in love with Charlotte. I feel like I fall deeper in love with Charlotte every time I go into those Creative Morning rooms, because I'm growing closer to the people of Charlotte, and Charlotte is its people. I think people think of cities as buildings and infrastructure, but what I'm reminded of just through this entire project is that cities are its people, and the more you get to know them in a really genuine way, the more you can fall in love with them and with the city.
And of course, those people there fall a little bit in love with you every month. That must feel good too.
Perhaps. Oh, yes, I would say that it definitely is a feel-good experience up there, no doubt about it. And the other thing I'll say about what is Creative Mornings for me is that it's something about being a dad that I kind of want to model for my daughter Mirabelle. What's possible when you nurture creativity in others, when you create spaces for people to be their genuine, creative, whole selves? What's possible in our community, in our lives, in our city? And so it's kind of cool to have Mirabelle come and see what the magic that's happening in the Creative Mornings rooms as well. So part of it is father-fueled as well, I think, yeah.
Is there a philosophy that guides your production as you think about what you are presenting to the audience?
First of all, I could never do it by myself. I have an amazing team of volunteers. We're all volunteers at Creative Mornings, and so I have this amazing team of volunteers who get the vision, they rally around the idea every month, and they play their own unique, incredibly valuable role in making these mornings possible. So thank God for them. I'm so grateful for that team. A couple of things in terms of the sort of guiding philosophies of producing an event with so many moving parts. One is that as long as it's fun for us, I think it's going to be fun for the audience. So we're always trying to keep it fun for us as people producing and actually executing this event. The moment it stops being fun, we might as well just hang it up or hand it off to someone else to do. So far it's been really fun, and I think that translates to the vibe that the experience that people are having in the room. We always want to create an event that if no one showed up, and thankfully we haven't had that issue yet either, but if no one showed up, that we would still enjoy it because we love the components that we've built into that morning. So I think by bringing those two things, those two lenses to the process, we're able to kind of get each month's event to where we want it to be. And I do lean on my professional theater producing skills as well. I think over the decades I've developed a good innate sense of flow, like what makes a good flow for a 60-minute experience, and how can you touch on the different, experience a spectrum of emotions, and what order should those emotions go in, and how do you, as my friend Tim McCleary would say, how do you create freedom within a framework? This is, one of Tim over at the Involvement Practice, one of Tim's guiding philosophies, freedom within a framework. So we have this framework at Creative Mornings, but we also want to allow every human being in that audience to experience whatever they need to experience as the components happen that morning. So it's a pretty fascinating thing. We're still learning as we go.
What do you hope it becomes?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny you asked that, because someone asked me that last night. And I looked at the person and I said, I'm not sure yet. I hesitate to sort of look too far into the future with it. We are sort of flying by the seat of our pants to a certain extent. It is a big event every month, so really it's more like just keeping up the momentum. The sort of the velocity of that is quite something. I do imagine that we could have offshoot offerings and experiences that further enhance your life as a charlatan, your life as a creative human being, your life as someone who is building a business or has a dream that they're pursuing, and they need further support in pursuing and achieving those goals. What other things could we do as a chapter to sort of give that additional inspiration, practical, real-world support, whatever it is? So we're always sort of, my team and I are always sort of spitballing ideas, but we're not quite sure yet where. We want it to emerge organically.
What do you understand creativity to be?
Oh man, yeah. So I think for me, creativity is just sort of getting to the essence of what we're trying to accomplish and really sort of cracking it open at its nucleus. Like, how granular and specific can we get? One of the things that I really enjoy doing is, ad agencies will bring me in sometimes, and we'll do spitball sessions. Like, we'll spend an hour or 2 hours, sometimes a half day or a full day, just literally rolling up our sleeves around one campaign and just having a big sort of charged, really fun brainstorm session around that campaign. So for me, creativity is really kind of like, in addition to the other stuff, it's collaboration. It's like, can we get enough energy in the room where we're just pinging off each other in ways that we're unearthing things that probably none of us could get out on our own. And so this, for me, might be, you could probably connect the dots back to my previous life as a theater professional. Theater is, I think, one of the most collaborative art forms on the planet. And I thrive on collaboration. So even in my current life, Creative Mornings, not so much copywriting, which is a pretty solitary endeavor, but any sort of consulting work or like brainstorming and spitball work that people will bring me in for, just the more people in the room that we can just be, churning that energy up, the better for me. So creativity is about connection.
In academic life, we define just about everything, and one working definition for creativity is innovation that has value. Are we innovating what we need to innovate?
Wow, that's a good question, Mark. Yeah. I think there's so much room for improvement there. I actually just wrote an editorial for The Observer that used our most recent Creative Mornings event as a springboard to sort of deliver a message to folks who are running for office in our upcoming November election, which is to say, you all have creativity inside of you, but I don't see anyone really flexing those muscles in a meaningful way, in the way that they are approaching the problems of our communities, in the way that they are putting forth innovative solutions to those problems, in the way that they're even leveraging the people on their team or the people in the community to come up with those solutions, the collaboration that I was just referring to. So by and large, I would say that creativity is one of the great untapped, underutilized resources of our society. And the more we can encourage, in this case, our leaders and folks who are vying for those positions to use creativity in those roles, I think the better off we'll all be. And I know people usually go, they trip up on the creativity thing because they're thinking, oh, I'm not an artistic person. That's what they're thinking. I'm not artistic. And I'm not necessarily saying that, this is about breaking out the paint sets or the crayons or whatever. This is about creative thinking. This is about design thinking. This is about collaboration with others around you and really thinking outside the box. That sort of creativity is what I'm referring to.
Where would you like to see greater innovation? Where would you like to see the creativity that you're seeking to spark applied?
Yeah. Well, in some ways I want to see it poured into helping each other both sort of nurture and unearth these great ideas that we all have inside of us, and many of these ideas being applicable to the issues and challenges of our communities, but also in terms of bringing those ideas to life. One of the ideas that we're playing around with at Creative Mornings right now is perhaps in 2018 introducing this thing that we're calling the Charlotte Reciprocity Circle, which would essentially be a monthly opportunity for people to come together and help each other achieve their goals. I think that in some ways bringing that sort of creative thinking to those opportunities where, there are so many people that need support in bringing their creative ideas to life, but all they know of is this sort of age-old system where it's like the old tables, of people wanting a seat at a table, and there are only so many seats at those tables. And so the idea is, can we start creating our own tables and creating a culture of reciprocity where we're able to actually, in its most beautiful way, not like I'm going to help you if you help me, but more like how can we help each other? I think there are just really creative ways that we can start breaking down the old system of bringing ideas to life and creating new ways of bringing those ideas to life. I think that's how we're going to truly move the meter with things like the economic mobility issue and all the stuff that the Opportunity Task Force is working on. It's going to take not just creative solutions, but creative approaches to bringing those solutions to life. So,
you have a profile now. You've been doing this work with Creative Mornings for a while. You have name recognition. You have an identity. Do you think of yourself as someone fulfilling a role in this moment in the city's history?
I think of my team and I as fulfilling some sort of a role. If I was to say what it was, I think it's about creating space and opportunity for people to show up and be inspired and energized. I do think that, because we do deeply believe that everyone is creative, that everyone has so much creative potential inside of them, that if we can play the role of helping to spring that trap of sort of unleashing that creativity, of allowing them to sort of tap into it, open it up, let it start pouring out, then I think that's a valuable thing to bring to the conversation. And it's not just me, it's the whole team. And so, yeah, I would say if anything, it's probably something like that.
When someone hears the name Matt Olin, what would you want them to think?
I think I want them to think, first and foremost, that I'm hopefully a really great, loving husband and father, because that it all starts there for me. That is where it is at, and the other stuff is nothing without that for me. So I hope that that's the first thing they think of. That they think of that. And the second thing I would love for them to think is that what you see is what you get. I really do try to be an authentic, genuine person. It's not always, the most comfortable thing, but I have found myself going up on those Creative Morning stages and just sharing things about my own self or past that, maybe a younger version of me wouldn't have even thought about doing that. I think it's important for all of us to just be who we are and be authentic and genuine about it, and not trying to pose as paint these lives that we are opt to do on social media. So I guess those are some of the first things that I think of when you ask a question like that.
Matt, I'd like to talk about how you came to be who you are. Is there a memory you have of your childhood that illustrates growing up?
I grew up as an identical twin. My brother Mike is a dean at Princeton, and it's tough having him that far away, because in my entire childhood and certainly the most formative years, he was always right there by my side. Not just about just having like a sibling, but having an identical clone, a genetic clone, with me every step of the way. Pretty much same friends, same schools, all that stuff. So, it was interesting. In the 4th grade, there was some awards ceremony at our elementary school, and I remember winning a bunch of medals for these academic achievements that, quote unquote, these are my air quotes that you can't see on the podcast, but my academic achievements in the 4th grade. And my brother had gotten an award too. But then we went home and we were taking pictures in front of the mantle, and I had like 4 medals around my neck, and my brother had 1 medal around his neck. And that really struck me, not necessarily in the moment, but later in life. I remember thinking, that was very uncomfortable for me. I hated the comparison. I hated the fact that I had 4 medals around my neck and that my brother had 1 medal around his neck.
Why?
It felt like a false. I don't feel it was indicative of what really mattered. Maybe at the time I was excelling more academically than my brother, although my brother was getting great grades too. P.S. He got his PhD at NYU, and he's dean of Princeton. So it's like, it's funny to sort of look back and go, what was that all about? And I've actually spent a lot of time and effort trying to crack that one open for myself. Why, all these years later, does it feel so uncomfortable to look back and say, I hated those medals around my neck? I think I hated the fact that situation could even potentially make someone else feel bad.
Do you hate medals around your neck now?
I definitely shun them. I've really enjoyed a few of the honors that I have received lately. I was among other incredible people doing work in the community. I was honored at a Playing for Others Night of Gratitude evening, which was so meaningful, and the teens wrote a song for me, which was really cool. Strangely enough, as a graduate of Charlotte Catholic High School, I was informed a couple weeks ago that I'm being inducted into the Alumni Hall of Fame as a distinguished alumni. The ceremony is happening next Friday, and I will be in Disney World next Friday. So I am sending my best friend Tim Miner, also a Charlotte Catholic grad, to stand there in my stead and receive that honor. But all of them feel both humbling and slightly uncomfortable for me. And who knows, maybe it can still be traced back to that fourth grade medal moment in front of the mantle.
Matt, I'd like for you to read something.
Okay. I'm an identical twin, so I've been practicing the art of differentiation since the womb. I don't like being confused with others. I'm allergic to getting lost in the crowd.
So how do you reconcile this desire for differentiation with the fact that you felt awkward being recognized for your talents?
That is a piece that I wrote for my website as a copywriter and creative consultant. And it's a line that I'm pretty proud of because I think it's an interesting way to actually say, I'm not your standard copywriter. I have been practicing the art of differentiation since the womb. How do I reconcile it, though? It's funny, when I think back to growing up as a twin, I see many, many, many efforts that both Mike and I took to differentiate ourselves from each other. The most obvious of which is that I veered pretty hard into creativity, theater, arts and crafts, music, things like that. And Mike veered pretty heavily into sports. He was on the basketball team, baseball team, track team, things like that. So that was the most obvious way that we differentiated ourselves. And I think it's so important to, as humans, to sort of embrace, celebrate, and just dial up our individuality as much as we feel comfortable, as much as we can. Because it's like, we just got to be us, right? We have to be us. I don't want medals to be the differentiating element. I want the work, the joy that we're pushing out into the world, the way we're being with other people, the way that people will look at you and go, only from this guy or only from this woman. Like, that people would celebrate the way you are in the world, the things you say, the way you are with people, because it's uniquely you.
You could have chosen many things, as your brother did, but you chose the stage, you chose the performing arts, you chose the spotlight. Is it important to you to be noticed?
I'm actually pretty uncomfortable in the spotlight as well, and people would say, well, why are you hosting Creative Mornings? But that is something that I just deep down felt like it was some growing that I needed to do. Like, I wanted to feel more comfortable standing in front of crowds and talking. So I don't think being in the spotlight is important to me. I think it's important for my growth to be having that experience up there, but I don't think it's something that I relish to be in the spotlight. It's been a lot of fun, though. I will say that and continues to be an absolute hoot up there. Yeah.
Is it important to you to be liked?
Oh, yeah. This has been something that I've wrestled with my entire life. I hate disappointing people, and I'm working on all of these things. Like I am actively working on all of these things. I hate disappointing people. I hate saying no to people because that is also connected to disappointing people. Yeah. And so it would then stand to reason that if you were to pull those symptoms away, what's at the core of it is that it's important for me to be liked. If you went deeper, it probably means it's important for me to be loved. I don't know how armchair psychologists we want to go here, but we could, if we want to get down to the essence, it really is about wanting to feel like we're loved and we're lovable, and I think we all, on some level, at least exists with that issue. Some people may struggle with it more than others, but it's been a pretty real thing in my 44 years on planet Earth so far. Yeah.
Well, one of the things you're doing now is you're writing op-ed columns, and people are reading what you're writing who do not attend Creative Mornings. People who are not predisposed to applaud for you. Mm-hmm. You've received some negative reactions from what you've written.
Yeah.
Given what we've just talked about, this desire to be liked, how has it been for you to receive these reactions?
It's been a growth experience for sure. That we were told, I say we, the Observer chose, I think, 8 new writers to come on and write monthly editorials for them for the next year. And they very, we're very sort of, hey, fair warning, folks. Anytime you put something out into the world, there are going to be haters. Sometimes they're called trolls or whatever it is, but, people are going to write pretty nasty things about you no matter what you write. And I was kind of, I said, yeah, that's true. I've been in bands before. I remember we had a band that at one point had a lot of fans, but we also at the same time had a lot of haters too. That we even had there was a website that was like, the name of our band was Shadowflag, was like, shadowflagsucks.com or something like that. So early on I was dealing with haters, and anytime you do reach a certain level of visibility or output or whatever, you're going to sort of lure the haters out. But it took me a little by surprise this time around, because it's been a little while since I've been in that sort of vulnerable state, and for the most part I kind of laugh it off. And I've also vowed to myself, like, I don't want to read those comments anymore. I think left to our own devices, we'd say, well, what are they typing now? What are they saying now? And I'm really flexing that muscle to just put it out there and then leave it alone. And if folks are writing about it, that's fine, the good and the bad. But if I feel good about the piece that's been put out there, at the end of the day, I guess that's all that matters. It was an opportunity for me to say something that I really wanted to say.
What are the areas of growth for you as a creative person?
Well, I think creative courage is a big one for me. If I was to sort of point to any theme in my past, and we talked about collaboration and my love of collaboration, the fact that I thrive on it. There's another side to that sword, and it's that the more you get comfortable with collaborating, the more you may start to think, I can't do it on my own. I need people around me to pull this off, whatever this is. And so I think from time to time there have been projects that maybe I've been called to do that I haven't done yet, because on some subconscious level I'm convinced that I can't do that one by myself. I need someone else to collaborate with on that. So I think that really comes down to creative courage, creative confidence, trusting that you have enough road under your tires that you can pull something off that you're feeling called to do. And then, of course, having that fearlessness of, like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail, even publicly okay to fail. So yeah, I think maybe as time goes on, seizing those opportunities to tackle a project here or there that, maybe I could do by myself, if, even if my gut reaction would be to assemble a team.
Are there insights or statements about the world that you are not making that you're being cautious about?
Oh, good. That's a good question. I don't know. Probably, I would say probably, although it's not at the tip of my tongue. I will say that one of the big things that is just at very top of mind these days for me is there's just so much going on in the world right now. There's so much polarization and even folks just riveted behind their devices, throwing nasty stuff at each other from behind in the safety of their devices. That I just want to keep encouraging people to gather together in real life. I want people to meet face to face and have conversations, because I think a lot of the stuff that's being said online, we talk about this sometimes, but they likely wouldn't have the guts to say it to someone's face. And actually, even further, once you meet someone and get to know them and start to realize that, oh, you're a real human being and we actually might have more in common than I would have at first assumed, you may not even want to say those nasty things that you would have very easily, thoughtlessly typed to that person in a comments section. So I think that there's more messaging that I can be doing around that, encouraging people to please come together in real life. We need to be meeting each other face to face and not relegating ourselves to behind our screens.
If you could imagine a more courageous version of yourself, what would that Matt be doing that you're not doing now?
He'd probably be playing more music, to be honest with you. That is one of the great loves of my life that I've let fall to the wayside. I had a little taste of it a few months ago where I actually, our house band at Creative Mornings let me sit in on a song with them, and it was the first time in maybe a decade or more that I have been up, playing my sloppy keyboard and singing and just being a part of that band experience and feeling the energy with the audience. And it was a very vivid reminder that I miss that. So whether it's I'm withholding because I think those days are over, or because I feel like I don't have the time, or whatever it is, I think if I would unleash a little more courage, it would probably lead to a little more music in my life.
Matt, I'd like to go back to some moments in your life. You went to UNC Chapel Hill. Mm-hmm. What did you discover about yourself in college?
Well, I definitely discovered that I enjoyed being out on my own. If I was to think back to even high school, I think a lot of my friends they couldn't wait to move out of the house and go to college. And I was the opposite. I was actually afraid to leave home. I don't know what it was, what sort of arrested development was going on there, but I remember I spent a summer at Governor's School. I don't know if you've heard North Carolina Governor's School before, but I spent the summer between sophomore and junior year of high school at Governor's School, and I became so dreadfully homesick that I almost called it quits and threw in the towel and came back to Charlotte. And somehow, and I don't remember how, I don't know if my folks convinced me or what, but somehow I just hunkered down and I stayed. And by the end of Governor's School, I felt growth. I felt like I had pushed through some sort of a block. And so as high school wrapped up, I started to feel my fear dissipate a little bit, but it was still pretty scary. And I didn't see that fear in my friends, my peers at the time. So I was like, I think I'm the only one scared to go to college. But what I found very quickly was that I loved it. I was ready, and I just needed to do it. And it reminds me of a book that I recommend to people sometimes, which is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And that was one of those feel the fear and do it anyway moments. It was clear that the fear was saying, you need to do this. And it really, I could almost palpably feel the change in my body when I went to college. Like, oh yeah, I just hit a touchstone moment for myself. I matured. So I think back to my Chapel Hill days. I just loved my experience at Chapel Hill. It was one of the most magical 4 years that you could imagine.
Did you have clear ambitions when you graduated?
I was pretty confused when I graduated. I knew I wanted to be a producer, but I didn't know if I wanted to produce film and television or if I wanted to produce professional theater. So I actually went out and spent the summer between junior and senior year of college. I went out to Hollywood on an internship program, and I spent a summer working at CBS Television City and meeting tons of people who have made their careers out there, some quite accomplished. So I was really sort of testing the waters, like, do I want to move out to California and go film and TV? But I never pulled the trigger on it. I think it was too far away for me, quite frankly. I love my family. I'm an East Coast boy, and it just felt a million miles away. But that said, I didn't quite know, like, I knew I wanted to be a producer, but I wasn't quite sure, like, what's the next step? Like, how do I do this? I actually took the LSAT, applied to law school, got into some law schools. My plan with that route was to become get my degree in entertainment law and use that to secure a position at a studio or something. But I just, like, the acceptance letter was sitting on my desk. You were supposed to sign it to sort of say, yes, I'm coming to college, or I'm coming to law school. And I would look at it every day and be like, I'm going to get back to you. I'm not ready to sign you yet, but maybe tomorrow. And I ended up chucking it. I just couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't going to enjoy the law school route. And lo and behold, I discovered this MFA program at Columbia, theater management and creative producing. And I thought, this is it. It's on the East Coast. It is in my first love of theater, and that was such a game-changing moment. The fact that I found it, which was amazing, but then that they accepted me, and then I was able at long last to move to New York and start a producing career in theater as a result of that, was just one of the great touchstone joyous moments of my life.
So what were those years like after your MFA at Columbia? What happened next?
It was incredible. I had landed a position at Dodger Theatricals, which was probably, I would say, the most prolific Broadway producing company in New York, and just started working my way up the ranks there. I started as an intern, and back then interns were not paid. I don't know if interns are paid now, but I think it's sort of expected that interns will get paid these days, but back then it was a no-go. And I just kept showing up and showing up and showing up and showing up. And eventually the partners there said, guys, I guess we should put this guy on payroll. He's like here more than most of us. And so then I made my way into company management, and eventually I was a part of the 4-person executive producing team at Dodger Theatricals. And the 4 of us, the partners, would come to us and say, okay, we want to produce a revival of The Music Man on Broadway this coming summer. Go. And the 4 of us were basically charged with taking that and running with it and casting it and building the team and finding the theater and marketing it and everything up till opening night. And I got to do that over and over and over and over again with so many different projects. It was incredibly exciting. It was absolutely thrilling. I mean, you're working with celebrities. I'm in my early to mid 20s, and I'm working with, Ray Fiennes and Whoopi Goldberg and Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick and folks like that. It was, that was kind of crazy. Going to Tony parties and all sorts of other parties, and just living that kind of glitzy lifestyle with a lot of hard work during the day, where you're in the theater putting on a show. So yeah, I mean, my 20s were just thrilling, absolutely thrilling.
You chose to leave it, though. You chose to return to Charlotte and become managing director of Charlotte Repertory Theater.
Yeah.
That was a key decision.
It was a huge decision. I was 27 at the time, and in retrospect, it's like, wow, 27 years old and taking a position like that, that's a little crazy. That was definitely one of those moments where I thought, this is what's right for me. This is what's next. The situation itself didn't turn out to be that. And I was only at Charlotte Rep for, I think, 2 seasons. And then, well, how do we put this? Was asked to step down. But it's a tangled web, shall we say, that led to that particular moment.
You returned to New York.
Yep.
But it was also an interesting time of your life that you've since called the thrash. What is the thrash? What was going on in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those. It felt like I was turning a corner, but the corner never ended. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like you're turning a corner, and you turn a corner, you expect to see what's next for you as you turn that corner. But it was almost like walking around a round wall, where it's like I just wasn't arriving at the vision of what was next for me. Yeah, I think it was a lot of things sort of conspiring at the same time. I had left rock music behind. This play that I had poured 5 years of my life into, The Other Place, was that incarnation, the Broadway incarnation, was coming to an end. It has since had quite a life since and been produced in more than 80 cities around the world and continues to be produced. But at the time, it was just, I could just see like, oh, this particular version of the project is over.
But ultimately, you lost creative control of that project.
Yeah, I did. That was a tough moment.
Mm-hmm. And that added to the thrash.
It absolutely added to the thrash. It added to my a general sense of distrust in people around me. It added to what am I supposed to be doing? What am I being called to do? And it was around that time that I also met my wife Sarah, and we fell in love and we got married, and we found out the day we came home from our honeymoon that we were pregnant. And so that section of my life started to sort of pick up into hyperdrive. And so I think all these elements sort of conspired to lead to the thrash to a certain extent. What is next for me? And I think what it turned out, I was so hyper-focused on what the next project was for me, but really I think what was next for me was connection. It was basically about opening up, allowing people to see who I really am, and connecting more and more with my fellow humans, including my wife and our daughter.
Do you think that you would be doing the work now the way that you're doing it now, but for that experience of going through the thrash?
I don't think so. I think that going through the thrash brought me to a point where I think I bring a certain depth of love to projects like Creative Mornings, because they're so much more meaningful to me now than they would have been pre-thrash or sans thrash, if you will. So,
you mentioned Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah changed your life, didn't she?
Oh my gosh, immeasurably. Continues to this very day.
You're a power couple of sorts, you and Sarah. I want to share something that I just read in Time magazine and get your reaction to it. A book has recently been published called The All or Nothing Marriage: How the Best Marriages Work. The premise goes like this: 21st century spouses now seek partners who can spot potential in their mates and bring out their best authentic selves. The best marriages are partnerships of self-expression and personal growth. Modern spouses are expected to be each other's life coach, therapist, lover, and public champions, while also being vulnerable, familiar, and playful. That would seem to be you and Sarah. Is it?
Well, it's what we aspire to be, certainly. And I think on our best day, we're doing 60% of that. I wish I had written that myself. I actually quite love that beautiful, idealized version of marriage. And I think that those are the things we're shooting for. I think if you go down that list that you just mentioned, we are shooting for all of those things with each other. Absolutely. And some days we're better at it than others, but we're staying super conscious of it. We are all in with each other. We continue to work on our relationship, very consciously work on our relationship together. We're even trying to dial that up more these days and actually carve out more time where we're sitting down specifically to talk about ourselves, our relationship, how we can support each other more, how we can enhance our non-professional lives more. And it's also funny that passage mentions life coaching because, Sarah is a very accomplished life and leadership coach. And in the early days when she first started out, I can't tell you how many times the phrase, "Don't coach me," when it was uttered from both of us, because I started picking up on some of the coaching language too, and then I would try to coach her, and she'd be like, "Don't try to coach me." So we were sort of getting our sea legs on at that point. But now what's cool is that we can bring the sensibility and the sort of the perspective of coaching to our relationship without going deep into the coaching language around it. It's just a different lens to be able to look at ways to improve our relationship.
You both have public profiles, and your marriage, to some degree, is public. So this is why I ask.
Sure.
Do you feel a responsibility as a couple to model your relationship to others?
I think that it would be cool if we did model something great for folks, but I think if I feel a responsibility around that, it's for modeling it for our daughter. I actually don't feel a responsibility to model it for others. I actually wouldn't want that pressure. I doubt Sarah would too, but we at home, we are very conscious about the fact that we want to model that for Mirabelle, that we want to show Mirabelle that we put our marriage first, and as a result, we are hopefully great parents to her, and that we're sort of, I don't know, paving the way for a healthy life for Mirabelle. So yeah, I think the responsibility Iris is in on our home life, and I try not to take on that responsibility outside of that.
Matt, do you have a spiritual practice?
No, I can't say that I would be one of those folks that I say that I'm spiritual, not religious. I grew up Catholic, and there are parts of Catholicism that still feel good to me. I also married someone who was and is deep into the yogic world, in particular Kundalini yoga, meditation, and there's spirituality there that feels great as well. We have actually, as a family, been on and off trying to find where's our spiritual home here in Charlotte, and we've gone to different services at different churches, and Sarah quite amusingly calls it shopping for God. And so I think we're still shopping for God, because while I answer the question no, this asterisk to that is that I want to have that spirituality back in my life, but it needs to feel right. It needs to feel, authentic to who we are. So we're searching for that. We're consciously searching for that, and I'm eager to find it.
When you think about the journey that you are on, who are you becoming?
Oh boy, Mark, the big questions. Let's see, who am I becoming? Honestly, not to get sort of like cheesy about it, but I hope I'm becoming just the best version of myself that I can be. And I know that feels like a cliched answer, but at the end of the day, I can't think of any other way to answer it. I just want I want people to if they take anything from what I'm doing out there, it's that I'm just trying to be the best, absolute best version of me that I can be, and to try to, I don't know, like develop parts of me that could stand to be developed so that I can be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better writer, be a better producer of events, and hopefully be a better citizen and fellow creative with my fellow Charlotteans.
If a larger stage called, if New York beckoned, if Broadway wanted you back, if you had an opportunity to have a larger platform, would you go?
It's hard to imagine. And I say that because the value that I'm getting, the joy that I'm experiencing doing the work that I'm doing here in Charlotte, for Charlotte, with Charlotte, and raising my family here, and it's hard to imagine that doing that in another place, even if a larger stage was a part of that it would compare. It feels so rewarding to be here in Charlotte doing this work that it's hard to imagine stepping away from it.
When it's all said and done, Matt, what is the copy that you want to accompany the memory of your name?
Well, I hope the copy has something to do with nurturing the creativity of others. I believe that when we put our creative selves out there, when we put our creative ideas out there, and when we express ourselves creatively, those are acts of courage, and they're acts of bravery, because we're really putting our true vulnerable selves out there. Creativity, showing our creativity is like showing our truest self. And so if I can create opportunities for people, if I can inspire people to put their creativity out in the world, then in that way I'm inspiring people hopefully to put their true selves out into the world. And so yeah, let's draft a little copy around that. We'll put that on the gravestone maybe.
Thank you, Matt. It's been a delight.
Thank you for asking, Mark. I appreciate it.
You bet. Matt Olin is the owner of Matt Olin Creative, a copywriting, branding, and creative consultancy. He is also the host of CreativeMornings Charlotte, a breakfast lecture series for the creative community. Matt earned his undergraduate degree at UNC Chapel Hill and his MFA from Columbia University. And now, a personal word. When I listen to Matt Olin talk about bringing people together to enrich the creativity of the city, I'm reminded of a book entitled Integral City: Evolutionary Intelligences for the Human Hive. Marilyn Hamilton, a self-described catalyst of city well-being, asserts that the purpose of a city is to optimize the life of the human species and to add value to the life of the planet. She examines cities as whole systems. With nearly 60% of the human population now in cities, and the scale of our urban development exceeding the carrying capacity of bioregions to support them, many of our cities are in crisis. Her book proposes a new integral framework so that cities can adapt to change and thrive. Her central thesis is that cities evolve through stages of intelligence. Communities must constantly solve problems. They must regularly reorganize to provide essential services and reinvent themselves to confront threats and exploit opportunities. People and communities with greater integral development or levels of intelligence and complexity have more resilience to survive. They literally have more assets and capacities to manage conditions of stress. Intelligence comes in many forms across multiple domains. It includes the intelligence of mechanics, athletes, accountants, artists, cooks, counselors, and plumbers. Intelligence progresses from self-awareness to other awareness to context awareness to system awareness. The broader and deeper these intelligences are in community, the greater the capacity for regeneration. Regeneration in community occurs through shared learning of competencies and capacities. And that is where Matt Olin comes in. He is enriching the spirit of his city by gathering creative people together. Creative activity plays a vital role in helping communities regenerate. The spoken word, music, dance, and drama pass along accumulated wisdom and provide vocabulary and tools for the invention of new visions. The arts help us become increasingly attentive and intentional. If we understand a city, as Marilyn Hamilton does, as a living system that emerges from the intentions and interactions of people and groups to produce both a conscious presence and a habitat, it is through creative activity and the arts that a city evolves. This is Mark Paris, and you've been listening to On Life and Meaning. Thank you to my partners Andy Go, producer of the show, and to Chris Curriton, art and media director. This is how you can help. Please write a review on iTunes. It helps us grow our audience. Follow us on Facebook. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. And become a patron. We are on Patreon, a crowdsourcing platform that allows you to support what you value. Visit us also on our website, onlifeandmeaning.com. Thank you for listening.